Hey guys, this is my sister Tiffany, and we just watched Hereditary, and this was one of the scariest movies I have ever seen. It's really good, it's really well made, but it's freaking terrifying. And that's why I can say it's well made, because it's a horror movie, so it definitely did what it needed to do. Hereditary is about a woman who has a loss in her family, and she's grieving, and she also has a history of schizophrenia, and she has a daughter, a son, and a husband, and they live in this big scary house, which is very typical for these types of scary movies, and they are just dealing with a lot of different visions and little glimpses of stuff. They're dealing with the past trauma, they're dealing with the present trauma. It's just terrifying because you know she has this history of mental illness. You're not sure what's real, and what this director does so well is the shots are so immaculately constructed. You always have all this space in the background to kind of pick out little details, and you're never sure what is going to move or how the camera is going to pan. The camera work is just so... I hate it so much. It was so freaking manipulative. You would see their reaction and it would ever so slowly start moving, and the whole time I just had a knot in my chest. If you have any type of high blood pressure, I would stay away. Even though it's a good movie, I was really stressed out. What did you think?
Yeah, so I like horror movies a lot. I would say I'm a fan of them. I like writing scripts for them, and this movie was just leagues above what I've ever even seen in my past, what I've thought of. I thought my thoughts were crazy, but apparently it's not. The majority of the movie was just me going like this the whole time, and I think I told my brother from the very beginning of the movie up until the end, I think I mentioned, I was like, we can just walk out. Like anytime, we just walk out. It's too much for me. Like too much, too scary. I mean, so in the beginning, something really horrible happens and it's terrifying and it's really well done. And I was like, you know what? I think this is one of the worst things I've ever seen. And then it just got worse and worse and worse. And I have to say, like, that's actually really masterful. I think that's exactly what, a movie should/can do. I think it, pushes the limits. I think it's kind of inspiring how your imagination can go that crazy and that creative. And at the same time, they did a really good job on it. Like everything my brother said, I thought the story was really interesting, and the camera work really helped bring the audience, like we felt it. I think the worst part/best part was the fact that there was like surround sound audio.
Yeah, it was like a 3D. It was they used really good use of the theater acoustics, because a lot of sounds I thought the audience was making. And that was actually part of the fun. I would definitely recommend watch this with an audience, because at home by yourself is freaking terrifying. But in the theater, they really manipulate the sound in the way it travels from front to back, and sometimes right to left, and it's super effective. It's super scary. There were a couple times where we looked at each other just to make sure we were both hearing the same thing.
Yeah.
Would you recommend this movie?
So, I mean, I love horror movies. I think they're really fun. I think they're really exciting. I think this one was just a little bit too much for my little heart. So for somebody like me, I like The Grudge, I like The Ring, Conjuring, Oculus. Those are like Care Bears. Like if you enjoy Care Bears. And this was not like that.
Yeah, what she was saying earlier, how you see something messed up and you think like, okay, this is the most messed up thing I've seen ever, or at least in a while.
Oh, yeah.
But they keep managing to top themselves. You trust them. You're like, okay, they know what they're doing, so that means they're gonna do something even more disturbing later, and that just adds on to the stress.
Yeah.
Because you're like, okay, these are good filmmakers. They are going to mess with me harder. There's no way. And I kept checking my watch. I was like, okay, there's half an hour left. There's 25 minutes left. That means more and more fucked up shit is gonna happen, and it's relentless. It's a great horror movie. I would definitely not recommend this for everybody.
Yes.
If you don't like horror movies, I wouldn't watch this. If you are mildly into horror movies, I wouldn't watch this. But if you are into horror movies, you are going to love this, and I think it's gonna scar you. I think it's definitely scarring me. I feel like this is almost therapy. Once we get into the spoiler territory, it will be therapy. Right now, trying not to spoil anything, I'm just kind of ignoring the demons that exist now after watching this film, or the horrifying images. So I mean, I would give this film an A, but this does not come with a recommendation. This comes with a warning label, personally.
Couldn't help it. I would look at my brother and say like, oh God, how much longer is this? And he literally told me he was like 45 minutes, 35 minutes, 20 minutes, 15 minutes. And I knew every time he told me that mark to expect something worse and worse and worse. And I was right.
Okay, so now we're going to get into spoilers, and we actually just want to talk about the ending because I actually didn't get a lot of the stuff that my sister got, and there's a few things I noticed that she didn't get. So if you haven't seen it, but you want to watch it, just stop here, or if you're never going to see it, then go ahead. In the end, a couple of things happen. Okay, a lot of things happen. The mother clearly snaps, or she is completely possessed by the demonic forces, the cultish forces that they're dealing with. It's either or. What I think is really cool about this movie is you can view this whole movie in the context of somebody having a mental breakdown or schizophrenia. It makes sense because we're seeing things from her point of view. So all this supernatural element could just be her hallucinating. On the flip side, a whole cult and possession side story that she thinks is responsible for all these forces. And that would also make sense. That means all the stuff we're seeing in the story is actually happening. It's not just in her mind. The master stroke of this film, I think, is that the more terrifying option is if she's actually just crazy. If she's a schizophrenic and all these horrifying deaths and the way they occur in the bodies and all this terrible stuff that's happening to her family, she's directly responsible. I think that's terrifying. It's ironic that it's actually super comforting if it's actually a demon. That means she's not at fault. That means she didn't tear her family apart. So that's like the general explanation, I think, of what's going on.
And
what are your thoughts?
Like my brother said, there are two thoughts that you can have. You can have the supernatural thought, or you can have the psychiatric thoughts. And so I guess the supernatural portion was that, so basically the grandmother's in a cult, and the cult has been steering this family to do this demon summoning ritual. And actually, if you go all the way back, the grandmother was really, really pushing the mother since the very beginning to actually have children. The mother mentions many times that she never wanted kids, she never wanted to be a mother. The grandmother was really excited for the birth of the second child, the girl. And the reason for that was because at the very end, you can see Joan, the lady. Joni.
Or Joan, yeah.
The best friend who was kind of helping out with her a little bit. She calls the demon Charlie for a sec. So basically implies that the grandmother managed to summon a demon basically in the second child and that little girl that died. And they say like, Joni also says like, hey, we gave you a better body now. Like, Charlie, this is the better body. You are the demon who will give us gold and riches. And yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Not everyone catches that because it happens real fast. And
yeah, so basically to sum what she set up, in the last scene when we see the brother do that sound, that's when she is possessed by her sister. And once he goes into the treehouse, they have that ceremony. It's like all the cult energy, or whether they're there or not, like I don't even know, but they are crowning him their new king because now his sister has taken over his body and the prophecy has been fulfilled. And now I don't know what's next. Are they going to take over the world or spread their message? That's basically what happens if you believe that there are supernatural elements. Again, if you don't believe there are supernatural elements, that means the mother just basically killed everybody and the kid is having similar hallucinations, and this is all in his head, and him doing the clucking sound, whatever you call it, has just been him the whole time. And I think both explanations are viable. There are a lot of parts that are a little confusing, like when she sets the book on fire and you see the father self-immolate all of a sudden. So that seems supernatural. But again, if this movie is from the mother's perspective, which it is, that could have all been in her mind too. The father definitely burned to death, but the conversation she had with them, that probably didn't happen like we saw it. She probably was dousing him in the kerosene and set him on fire, and there's probably a big fight that we just didn't see. And same thing with the son. When he's seeing all of these things, it's just not there. I would say that the only things that probably for sure are there are what the father sees as well, generally. The dead bodies in the attic are definitely there.
Yeah.
Because everybody sees it, we hear it, the father sees it. And supposedly, I'm pretty sure there were 2 dead bodies, so I think it was Joni and also the grandma who the mom had just dug up her grave. Yeah, that was really terrifying. This all this headless body stuff is not, it's not pleasant to think about. It's terrifying, so they definitely did a good job with that. But I think those would be the main questions. Is there anything else?
It's their theme with the headless bodies appearing everywhere, right?
Yeah, and
There are a
there's
lot of
really
headless bodies.
fucked up good foreshadowing of the little daughter cutting off
Yeah,
the
that was
bird.
good.
So maybe she did kind of foresee her own death in some way.
I mean, she's a demon, right?
Yeah.
A demon god, king.
Yeah, that's right. This movie is really well done because we can have this conversation, and also the dialogue is so minimal, gives you exactly what you need and nothing more. It doesn't over-explain. So the rest is completely up to you to have conversations with your friends about what you think happened, what you think didn't happen.
I guess like one final thought is the movie starts off with you zooming in onto this little miniature set, which the mother makes. And then it was really cool because, you know, you'd always come back to the miniature sets. They'd appear over and over again. And like at the end, it kind of looks like a miniature set again. And even throughout the movie, the set just kind of, you were like, this could look like a miniature. And I think it's really cool because like, I think it brings back to like, is this all happening in the mom's head or whatnot?
Yeah, I think this movie is a really good representation of schizophrenia, or at least it's trying to be. The miniature sets, you could look at that as when somebody's going crazy and everything just looks kind of fake, or it's not real. That applies to all the things they're seeing. That applies to the light halos and just seeing naked people. I've read a lot of stories, listened to a lot of podcasts about when people have these breakdowns, and whatever you can imagine, these people have seen it. So some people live like this all the time, and that's just so tragic. If I think about it from that perspective, it kind of lessens the terror because people have to deal with this. This is what all great horror movies do. They take a really a really major mental type of illness and they turn it into a horror film. That's what the Babadook did with depression, and this does with schizophrenia or other types of mental issues. That's just one of the reasons why it's so good and powerful. I think that's all we have. I know it's a little bit rambly, but hopefully you got a better idea of what was going on. If you've seen this film, what did you think? Did you like it? What's your interpretation of what happened? Thank you to my sister Tiffany for the review. Any last thoughts for the viewers?
I would love to know, do you recommend this for everyone else who likes horror movies? Because I personally don't. I thought it was too scary.
Yeah, it was really freaky. I'm a little freaked out. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.